Hi everyone. So we write about in our new books, The Brain Warrior's Way, a lot about sheep, sheepdogs, and wolves. So for a health book, it seems a little crazy that we would write about sheep, sheepdogs, and wolves. But really, we want people thinking a lot about that when it comes to your health, because everywhere you go, someone is, trying to give you food that's going to make you sick, or pour toxic thoughts into your head, or give you gadgets. The gadgets are now taking our attention away from our loved ones, and we want people to start thinking like sheepdogs, not like sheep, because sheep unfortunately just follow their flock, and they'll walk right off a cliff, right? We know that. So we want you to start thinking like a sheepdog. But unfortunately, just distinguishing between sheep and sheepdogs isn't usually enough. You got to also pay attention to the wolves out there, because there are wolves that are always willing to either somehow they want to gain from your misery in some way, whether it's because they're making money off of it, or misery loves company, or whatever it is. There are wolves who are happy to make some gain at your expense. So we just want you to be aware of it. And when we come up with this concept, people usually grasp it, but they're not sure how to make that transition. So it's really interesting. I'm going to actually go through the steps really quickly, and then I'm going to use the simplest example that I can think of. So here's a couple ways you can just quickly start thinking like a sheepdog. Number one, you have to be very clear on your outcomes. You have to know your why. You've got to know why you want to do this. Otherwise, you're never going to stick with it. You'll never do the what if you don't know the why. So be very clear on the outcome you are trying to achieve. Always ask yourself, is my behavior getting me what I want? We want you to do a one-page miracle. Write everything out on one page, stick it to your mirror, and every day, my 13-year-old does this, like every day. She's like, okay, is what I'm doing going to get me what I want? That's why she's so disciplined for her age. Is my behavior getting me what I want? So know your why. Make a clear stand. Once you decide what that is, you have to be willing to make a clear stand. The people who are really successful, it's funny, you'll hear people make all sorts of comments about someone who's successful. How lucky they are, what they have, they're this, they're that. What they don't see is the sacrifices behind the success. There are tremendous sacrifices behind any success. Very few people are just lucky. They work very hard, and they give up where other people, they give up a lot of things where other people are wanting to play or giving into peer pressure. So you've got to know what you want and be willing to make that stand and give into those sacrifices, or sacrifice for what you really believe in. Know the battle ahead. So there's going to be a battle ahead, because there's going to be wolves. When you become a sheepdog, there are going to be those battles ahead. You're going to have those interactions that are going to be really uncomfortable. And the only thing that really helps most people, besides knowing their why, is knowing their purpose. So many people have pain that they've transformed into purpose. It's not always about pain. Some people are very young and they manage to figure it out. But pain to purpose, we find with our community, is very helpful. If you've taken care of somebody who's really young, really sick rather, or you've been really sick, pain to purpose often is enough to get you really motivated to stick with that through the battles. So know that there's going to be battles, and know your purpose to really help you. You got to be able and willing to protect your sheep. If you're a sheepdog, you got to protect your sheep. It can't just be about you. It's never just about you. In fact, it's usually about generations of you. That's how we want you to think of it. You've got to protect your sheep and build on your pack, okay, your tribe, if you want to be successful at this. And then also know that there's patience, grace, and forgiveness. You never know when that transformation is going to take place in other people. So even though there's going to be these battles and things going on, and you're becoming the sheepdog, most of us become really overzealous initially. So you have to also learn to be patient, graceful, and forgiving, so that people will come to love themselves and want to join your tribe. So I'm going to give you a really simple example. I think when I do this, I get your messages and I love them, so please keep them coming, because they are how I get my material. They are how I decide what I'm going to talk about. What is on everyone else's mind is what I end up talking about. And I've been getting a lot of messages about some of you going through tremendous struggles, leaving abusive relationships, or relationships, husband of 40 years is having an affair. Things that you are really struggling with, and you're managing to take care of yourselves in spite of that. Or some of you are struggling with it. So I'm getting my information, from that. But sometimes when I try to make it, believe it or not, on an adult level, it becomes harder to grasp, But when I relate this to things that you really understand and love and care about, that you're passionate about, like your kids or your grandkids, it makes it so simple to get, right? So that's why I want you to tap into your passion. So I'm going to make this really simple. This example will make it so crystal clear. It's the wisdom of a 13-year-old, okay? Obviously, I love parenting, and I often don't feel like I deserve the kid I have. But this is pretty amazing, this story. And it made this so crystal clear. So my daughter's very clear about her goals, and she thinks she has a really big purpose in life, and she's excited about that. And so we've been talking about that for a long time. In fact, the problem with her is that when she was little, she had a really strong will. She was really tough for me when she was little. She was highly intense, really strong-willed. I mean, I was like ready to pull my hair out at times. We used to call her Baby Hitler, not to her face, of course, but we called her Baby Hitler. And my husband used to say she's either going to be the leader of a gang or the leader of the free world. We had no idea which one it was going to be at that point. We just knew we had to try and direct this intense energy she had. But now she's becoming this amazing person who thinks for herself. She's definitely not a sheep. So here's an example. So this is every mother's dream, right? So we had an interaction where there was, she came home and told me, she's like, I'm so disappointed. And I said, what? And she said, there's going to be a party this weekend, and the kids at my school are getting together. One of the parents is out of town, and they're going to have a party, and there's going to be alcohol. And I said, whoa. I said, that's, like I told you it was going to start this year, but that's pretty big. You're right. But she was so upset. She goes, no, that's not it. She goes, I got into a big thing at school. She goes, this is like a big thing. And I'm like, what do you mean? So what happened was someone invited her to the party, and they told her to keep it on the down low, right? They were supposed to keep it quiet, and she was one of the cool kids who was invited. And she thought he was kidding at first, and then she went, you're serious? She said, you told the wrong person if you thought I was going to keep this quiet. And she got really upset, and she marches over to her whole group of friends out in the open, really loudly for everyone to hear, and she sort of launches into chewing them out and basically telling them how disappointed she is. She said she had higher hopes for them and higher expectations for them. And she's like, what, pizza's not cool enough for you now? And she got really upset. And then she said, she's like, yeah, I'm not going. She's like, by the way, she's like, I'd never do something illegal with you, but I have another party to go to anyways. One of the kids goes, well, what party is that? She says, I have a party over at my grandma's house in my Snuggie binge watching Netflix. She's like, that's the cool place to be. And she walked away. So she like sort of stepped over to the side with her other friends. And then she looks at her best friend who has ADD and who is very impulsive and tends to get into a lot of trouble. Loves this girl, but this girl doesn't really think for herself. So she's a sheep. Okay. And she says, so what are you going to do? And she was going to go to the party. And all of a sudden she goes, I'm going to do whatever you do. So the reason that I'm telling you this example is because there's obviously a wolf in this scenario. There was someone who invited her to the party who was putting peer pressure on some of the kids. Who was it was like, you're cool, so you're invited. And if you're not invited, you're not cool. And if I invite you and you're cool, you then can't say anything. That peer pressure, right? So there's that wolf who, they're trying to put the pressure on. They're also content as long as no one's fighting them, as long as they can get people to do what they want. But then all of a sudden, this little sheepdog comes out, fangs like, she's snarling and she's got her fangs going. She literally chewed them all out. And, there may have been this altercation or this interaction between her and the sheep, but then she quickly stepped back and went, oh, by the way, I think maybe I need to find a new friend group. And she's like, I'm not going to take the fall for you guys, and I'm not going to get a bad reputation because of you. So she took such a strong stand that there was no fight to be had. She was ready to walk away. And she was ready to stand up for what she believed. And the next thing that happened is the most interesting part. That's when people started to actually shift over to her way of thinking. And it was like, she looked at him and she's like, so what are you going to do? And all of a sudden they're like, well, I don't even know if I'm going. And they became very wishy-washy about the whole thing. It was no longer the sort of cool thing. And so, because she exposed it all as being not cool. And that was, so just a really interesting way, when no one stands up to the wolf, everyone gives in to the pressure. When someone stands up to the wolf, suddenly everyone begins to be uncertain about what's cool and what's not. And her friend, actually, one of her friends thought it would be funny to tell this kid to ask my daughter to go because she knew what would happen. She knew my daughter would sort of get upset. And she's a good girl, and she thought it would be really funny. And so this boy who had asked my daughter to go to the party went over to the girl that had told him to ask her and said, "I thought you said she was cool." And she looked at him and she said, "She is cool. She's just not stupid." So that's where that title came from. And I just want you to notice what happens when one sheepdog stands up, when they have the courage and they're willing to take those consequences. Now, the funny thing is I would have been super proud of her, and I told her this. I'd have been just fine. I'm so proud of you for even telling me. It would have been fine if you just chose to walk away and do nothing. I'd have been okay with that, because peer pressure is really rough in school. But the fact that you did that at your age is way beyond what I could ever imagine. I would have never done that at her age, ever done that at her age. And her being willing to pay those consequences. But the result is all these kids starting to then go, maybe this isn't a good idea. And one last thing she said is, she goes, "You think this is a secret, and it's not going to be a secret once the police come." And it scared them. So exposing that is a really important thing. And I use that 13-year-old example because it's so clear and so simple. When we get into being an adult, we think our own problems are so big, but 13-year-olds think their problems are big, and we can see them so easily. So I hope that made that simple. I hope I didn't actually make it worse. But as I get your stories coming to me every day, and I am amazed at the courage that some of you have, and some of you question yourselves. And I don't want you to question yourselves. I want you to just know that if you're a sheepdog, eventually it changes. And, there's going to be difficulty. Sheepdogs fight. That's why sheep are a little scared of sheepdogs, because they have the gift of aggression. But that's the whole job, right? That's the mission. That's the purpose.